All right, I think that's all I needed to talk about there. So I'm going to get started here on a little session I prepared called Go For It. So let's get this thing started off. So why are you here? I know why you're here. You're here to create wealth without working yourself to death, I would assume, without taking big risks, and without guaranteeing debt. 3 ways to lose on planet Ron, and you've all heard it. We don't write big checks. We don't write big checks. We can't lose big checks. It ain't rocket science. We just don't write big checks. Now, I write big checks. Some of you write big checks, but clearly with the intention of getting that check back quickly with a larger check. For example, what I write checks for is to pay all cash for houses. Mine come out of my IRA for the most part, and we will certainly have that discussion. But whenever I pay cash for a house, I don't intend to leave the money in the house very long. I intend to write that big check and get that money back one of 2 ways. I'll either replace it with a private loan, and I'll borrow more than I put out. I immediately get cash back, or I will rehab and retail the property and get a big check back. So as long as I'm getting a big check back quickly, I don't mind writing a check. And I don't mind you writing either, but only after you are trained on what to pay for that house. Because, boy, if you pay too much for that house, that's a hard lesson you don't have to take. And the temptation is to pay too much right now. Are we in a hot market right now? Is it a tough time to buy bank-owned properties right now, even though there's millions of them out there? Yes? Yeah, so what? I mean, there's still plenty of them available, but you got to work a little harder, and the temptation is greater for you to write these checks and pay too much for the properties, and I don't want that to happen to you. So training prior to writing. All right? You're here to increase your cash flow, build stability into your life, have some dependable income, and I would imagine retire filthy, stinking rich. So making a fortune in difficult times only requires a system. And guys, there's nobody has a better system than we have. And it didn't come easy, I can tell you that. It took a lot of years to get where we're at for you right now. Everything is so systemized, there's honestly, truly, you hear me say it, I'm telling you, there's just not that much for you to do. In fact, somebody told me that the less you do, the more you make. And speaking of that, if you want to get my book, you better hurry because they're about sold out of them out there already. We only have 200, that's all we printed. So, what you don't have to do to amass a fortune. You don't have to be smart. That's good, isn't it? Okay, we passed that test. You don't have to have a college degree. Sometimes I think that works against folks. The smartest people I know, well, some of the smartest ones I know, didn't have a college degree. And in fact, 2 out of the 3 of the people you saw up here yesterday did not have college degrees. You don't need to do extensive planning. What's the problem with extensive planning? Yeah, it changes so fast you never stop doing the planning. And because when you're out here in the real world and you're in the arena, you get to plan as you go. Now we also have to start with a plan. Don't get me wrong. We'll have a plan here before you leave here, but just the same, I'm not a believer in long-term goals because they're going to change so much before you get to them. I'd rather you set some short-term goals and achieve the short-term goals and continue making those, and pretty soon your long-term goal will be way beyond your wildest expectations, as evidenced by everybody that sat up here yesterday and so many people you're going to hear from here. What you think you can achieve right now is minimal to what you're capable of achieving. And you don't need any credit. In fact, if your credit sucks, that's good. And if your credit is excellent, that's not so good because you have a tendency to actually use it before you think and rely on it instead of your brain to make decisions based on putting yourself where you don't have to use that credit. The minute you use your credit, you're at risk. I don't have to tell you that. And I don't have to tell you that an awful lot of folks use their credit with good intentions, didn't work out so well, and wish they hadn't have used their credit. Some of you heard my story. I used my credit back in the mid-2000s, $50 million worth of personally guaranteed debt on commercial projects, and it didn't work out so well. But I've always said from the very beginning, we don't use our credit in the single-family house business. Save it for when you have a chance to really make it worthwhile to risk it, which, I did. My timing was just not very good. I should have known there was a recession coming. Well, some people predicted it. At least they say they predicted it now. I wish they would have been more boisterous back then, but probably wouldn't have believed them anyway. But you don't need credit to do what we do. Now, if you're going to do commercial projects and you want to put yourself at risk, believe it or not, I'm okay with that. But only after you clearly understand what those risks are and you're willing to take them, and that the math dictates that it makes sense for you to risk your credit. But certainly not in single-family houses. There's literally no reason for you to use your credit in houses. None. Do it the correct way. You don't need a lot of money. You're going to need a little bit of money. You've got a little bit of operating costs, which I'm going to cover here for you Sunday, I think. But it's amazing how small they are. You don't need money to buy real estate. You will use money a few times. You will use small amounts of money, even in the pretty house business. Sometimes sellers want a little money to get out. Sometimes maybe their payments are a little behind or something of that nature. But never a lot of money. We don't have to raise a big cash. And when we do raise cash to buy houses for cash, Jay's going to talk about that today, tomorrow, whenever he's up here. Raising capital is not a difficult thing if the project you're raising it for makes sense. And we're actually going to kind of explore that in the Shark Tank tomorrow. I'm looking forward to that. There's 6 people that probably aren't looking forward to that. But it's a good learning experience for the rest of you, because we are going to discuss during that, what do you need to do to present a project? What do people funding that project want to hear? And these are real sharks too. Any one of these sharks could take any project that is brought before us. You don't need to sacrifice your assets. And frankly, that's just a little bit of entity structuring there. I'm also going to cover that for you on Sunday the best I can while I'm here. There's more on that if you need it. Talk more about it in business management. And then there are Lee Phillips is our chosen teacher on that, and Lou Brown. Both of those are very, very good at that subject, and you have a chance to go to either one of those events you like. You don't need to take big risk, and the older I get, the less of those I want to take. I've taken my share of them. I'm a little weary of taking big risks when I don't have to. There was a time I didn't mind doing it, but the older I get, the more I mind. In fact, you should see my back with the arrow sticking out of it and the blood dripping down it. And this pioneering gets old after a while. I'll let the young folks do the pioneering, and we'll just step in and pick up what works and thank them for the prices they paid to make the mistakes they made so we don't have to make them. What you do need is a commitment to not only start but finish. And far too many people get started, but they just don't finish. And I hate to see that, really. You come, you learn, and then you go home, and for some reason you wander off into the wilderness, and we don't see you again, and you just don't complete the task. We do everything we can to help you do that, but unfortunately we can't go home with you. But Ron, all my family and friends tell me it won't work here. Well, so did mine. They're all still broke. I'm not. In fact, I'm the only rich guy in my family. They don't talk to me much. What it takes, got to be willing to do things a little non-traditionally. Got to quit listening to people who tell you the way they think it ought to be done who've never done it before. Got to have an entrepreneurial spirit. Boy, I'll tell you what, Donald Trump ought to be a good example of that, don't you think? I mean, he totally is turning our system upside down. He's surprising everybody. He's pissing off a lot of folks because he's surprising everybody, and he don't conform to the way they want to do it. And apparently America is buying into it. And what are they buying into? They're buying into somebody who does things differently than everybody else has been doing them. That's what they're buying into. Because so far I can't, I like Donald Trump, but so far I don't think he said a single intelligent thing. So up to date, and he's still winning the elections. Learn from those who are successful, and he's a good example of that. He has success in his own way. He doesn't conform to what other people want him to do. He does it his own way. And like him or don't like him, you can't deny his success. Spot the opportunities and ask for help when you need it. Is that a hard thing to do, especially for men? Ask for help. That's tough, especially for some men. It was for me when I was young. I mean, I just wouldn't do it. And then the older you get, the more you know, the less you know, and the more willing you are to ask for help. In fact, I'll ask for help even if I don't want it now. It's free. And you'll be surprised how much people are willing to help you if you just ask. Aren't we all waiting for somebody to ask us for help? Yes? Okay, well, then if you're that way, everybody else is too. Don't be afraid to ask. Plenty of it out there. And then, of course, you have to decide whether it's worth accepting that help or not. So, what would it be like to never have to worry about money again? Now, some of you are in that position right now. I know that. And some of you aren't. And some of you think about this every single day. Gosh, what if I didn't have to worry about money again? And you saw 3 guys up here yesterday, and every single one of them started with no less than anybody in this room starts with. None of them ever dreamed they would be where they are at today. All of them were worried about money when they began. And I think you heard a couple of them say that was the major driver for them. It's a major driver for me, but you also heard something from Russ, I believe. And I don't think you heard the same thing. Well, no, you didn't hear it. You just heard it from Russ. That one of the major drivers that started him was to prove that he could do it to everybody who was telling him he couldn't. Whatever your driver is, some of you might think it's money, but it's really not money. Maybe it's the same thing. You have to prove it. I know I had this discussion with Robin Thompson one time, and that's certainly what drove her, proving to her dad that she could do it. And I had those similar thoughts myself, because 35 years old and all you've ever done is fix cars in your whole life, your confidence level is not all that high. So I had to start proving it to myself first, and that didn't take very long, and then pretty soon I didn't care anymore. You know what'll get you over that hurdle? Where you don't care anymore what other people think? Not one check, a handful of them. Okay. Get yourself a handful of checks and you won't care what anybody else thinks anymore. Imagine life where you only have to work the hours you choose. Well, all of us are like that. Everybody up here is like that. It didn't take long for me to get that way. I just thought I worked more hours than I needed to, but today I work the hours I choose, except till I got here anyway. And every day when I get up, I don't have to do anything. When I get up, I pretty much already know what I'm going to do that day. I've decided the day before what I'm going to do. And if I didn't do any of it, nothing major would happen, because the time is over in my life where I really have to do anything or report to any place. Oh, you know, I have appointments and the phone appointments, and I set meetings, but all of them under my control. Rarely would I ever have a meeting or appointment where I couldn't change it if I needed to. So, you know, that's just not the case for most people in the world today. They are all driven by other people's wants and needs. You know, you're going to hear Marshall Silver tell you, you can either think or you can labor for those who think. It's a good thing we have a lot of people who can't think, or we wouldn't have any labor. And you know what? It's never, one thing I get out of the restaurant business is I get to see how the rest of the world lives. It is amazing to me how hard people will work for such small amounts of money. I mean, they work their tails off for peanuts. I mean peanuts. And that's just the way it is out there, and you'd never know it in my world, where, you know, it just is not like that. And well, I shouldn't say that, but you know, some of the staff at Global are in the same situation. They work for barely over minimum. We don't pay anybody minimum wage. We pay above minimum wage, but even then it's small wage compared to what you know, the people in higher income brackets are making. And you don't get the sense of what it's really like out there until you actually get in and involved with the people that are actually living on barely enough to even buy groceries on. I just don't know how to get by. I don't know how to get by. And as a employer, I hate the thoughts of a $15 minimum wage, but as a human, it's probably a good thing. And in fact, there are cases being made in the restaurant industry on both sides of this. Some people actually in the restaurant industry believe it is a very good thing, for the simple reason that it forces the employers to pick the best of the litter. It forces them to train them better. And the general belief is we can get more done with $15 an hour people, so that the actual increase in wages is not really an overall increase because it will require less people. Just a thought. Can you take vacations and go wherever you want, whenever you want? Well, I mean, I can. We're planning, in fact, I finally committed to take Beverly in an RV trip for the whole month of May. You won't see me for the whole month of May. I'll be touring the country, driving an RV because I couldn't find a driver and don't know where I'd put him if I did. And so we're going to be touring the country in an RV. I've been promising her that for 40 years. Time to get it over with and get it out of the way. Huh? But, you know, we can go wherever we want, whenever we want. We don't want to go as much as you know, we probably did in our earlier days. But on the other hand, I'm gone a lot. So you know, to me, a vacation is just another trip I got to take. I'd rather stay home. But, you know, when you're married for 50 years, you got to do what you're told, right? You guys all know the secret to a long marriage, right? You can be happy or you can be right. Pick one.